We're live. Hi, Greg. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good. How's it going?
Uh, I'm just sitting here. I just come in from the outhouse. Did you know you could come in from the outhouse?
Okay.
The full moon. The moon's in Virgo tonight, I believe. It's February 27th. Oh gosh, you gave me COVID. I
No,
took
you got it all over the
I took
place
my
already.
mask off too fast. As I took my mask down, you sneezed on me.
Well, you
Look
look
at
like
all,
a cowboy. You
look
look
at
like a
all the
cowboy today.
virus that's all around me now. That's from your sneeze. See it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're trying to give me COVID again, aren't you?
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
already had it once. You want me to get it again?
Well, you don't want to get this variety I'm hearing about in California. It's pretty nasty.
I
You're
was
not too
out
far from
back in the
there.
outhouse. I rode my horse and I had to go to the bathroom. And I come in, I decided I'd call you. I washed my hands, so don't worry. Um, how are you doing today, Greg?
Pretty boring day, to be honest. Not much going on here.
Oh, yeah, it's pouring here too. It's hot. It's awful hot here. When it was 0 in Texas, it was 70 here. I feel sorry for all those people that died there, froze to death. That's a terrible way to die, freezing to death.
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
almost froze to death a few times in Michigan uh, after my brother raped my fiance, and I lost my job, and I had to give my kids back to the first mother because he did that. Um, I ended up with,
At least you were smart enough not to run a charcoal grill in your house to try to stay warm.
well, I didn't have a house. I ended up living in my car for 2 years until I
Yeah.
got the money together to buy another ranch. Um, and I find it interesting. My family took my brother in who raped my fiance in front of my kids, but they left me on the street when it was 20 below zero. That's what families are for. Um, I guess he needed the help more than me. But I was working two jobs, sleeping in my car at 20 below for a couple of years. And well, I'd go to sleep at night and you couldn't leave the car running because you might die of carbon monoxide. So I'd turn the car off, put a sleeping bag around me, and go to sleep. At 20 below, you don't know if you're going to wake up again or not.
No, that's crazy.
It was awful cold. I did that for 2 years. Um, and then I decided to move to a warmer state, Florida. I lived in Key West for a while. But then I realized it was too hot for me in Key West, and I moved to Tennessee. Um, I wish my brother hadn't raped my fiance in front of our kids. That just
Now you've had a pretty difficult life and not the best relatives, to be sure.
uh, my brother was he had a Congressional Medal of Honor from the Army. Supposedly he saved a village, but he couldn't save his own family. It's fine. It's kind of um, and that's I don't. When veterans tell me that they fought and died for my freedom, I don't believe them because I don't think anybody can kill another person and set me free. I mean, I don't think freedom works that way.
Right.
And a lot of
I
vets
tend to
will,
think he had some psychological injuries from his experiences, is
well,
what it sounds like, possibly.
a lot of veterans will hate me for that, but I come from a military family. Admiral Byrd was one of my family members, and he was the Pacific Fleet World War II. Um, and then my cousin piloted the Enterprise. And I've heard all my life about how veterans have fought and killed people so I could be free, and I just don't buy that. I think that's a big fallacy.
Yeah, especially on 9/11. Of course, we know why 9/11 happened there to
On
cover
my
up
life,
the
yeah, on my
theft.
life, 9/11 was hiding my life, the receipts to my stolen business.
So all those people that went to go fight over there, they may have had the best of intentions in their mind, but what they were really doing was just covering up a theft for a president.
Yeah, for the Bush family, that's correct. Um, I didn't want to talk about that tonight.
Now, I was you were talking about ships though, and it was interesting to see that the Achilles ship that we stole the oil from Iran and then just came and I have to wonder,
Well,
here we offloaded.
back when I stopped Noriega's drug, it wasn't the Achilles, it was the Achilles laurel.
That's right. That's right.
Remember that? And
Yeah.
that was all related to my life too, and that was back just after Oklahoma bombing. And this generation, they don't put stuff like that together. I do, because I was alive and I know what
Yeah.
they were doing. They were hiding me. They stole my name and my business, and they hid me all over the world with these fake events like the Achilles laurel. And
They'll say that they took that money from the oil sales and donated it to a fund that supposedly is paying for victims of terrorism. But I have to wonder if we will ever see who actually gets that money, what the oil was
I've been
actually
a
sold
victim of
for.
terrorism by my own government all my life, 7 decades, and you know that, Greg. I'll never
Yeah.
see any benefit from any of their funds. They're
Right.
too busy hiding
That's
me.
right.
I found it interesting that they stole 2 million barrels of oil. They pirated 2 billion gallons of oil from Iran. At the same time, they raised my gas $1 a gallon. I find that
Yeah.
ironic, huh? And
Yeah,
then
we filled up today. It's 70 cents higher than when Joe Biden first took office
yeah, it's
already.
$1 higher here than it was. And they stole 2 million barrels. That's like $120 million worth of gasoline at least.
Yeah, we calculated it based on the price of
That's
a
just the price
barrel
of
of
a
oil.
barrel.
Yeah.
It was $124 million on that day they stole the oil.
So whose pocket did that money go into when they're stealing oil
They
like
parked
that?
the ship in Texas, and that's the Bush oil industry. So I think Joe Biden and former President Bush, he probably
Right.
offloaded it, and then they created this fund. And when Democrats create funds with Republicans, it's called a slush fund, and they use it for everything but what they say it's for. So I doubt any of that money will go to any real victims of.
Right.
terrorism.
15 years from now, somebody will get $100 or something.
And then I have
the rest will all go in their pocket.
Here's a question for you. If Iran attacked us last week and killed a couple American soldiers, why did Biden bomb Baghdad again? Shouldn't he bomb Iran?
One would think.
If Greg Bowe comes to my house and burns my garage down, am I going to go to Mike Demby's house and bomb his house? I'd go to Greg Bowe's house. Nothing they say in the news makes any sense or truth to me. And I know that them stealing 2 million barrels of oil from Iran and then raising my gas prices $1 a gallon don't make no sense. But people in this country, they don't try to put things together. It goes right over their head.
Yeah, if they're really bombing us, then that should be an act of war. If they're actually attacking us, and these are real stories, then why aren't we going over and retaliating and making sure that they can't bomb us again? Exactly.
Yeah. I was on that Gematrix page that your friend Jonathan Basie made, and he put up the numbers for the COVID virus, and it equals 4.4 in your calculator. Did you see that post you put up?
I don't know if I saw that one, but
yeah, it's in that Gematria group that Jonathan's in. I clicked on the link, and he's got that up. What do they call it? Unique COVID virus or something. It equals 4.4, and there's my 4.4 again.
Yeah, we sure see that quite a bit.
It's
all the
everywhere.
movies with 4.4 in it.
Yeah, they've marked me with that ever since the day they kidnapped me at 7 decades ago, Greg.
I've been finding it all over the Bible too, so I know that they've used
everywhere.
the same sort of language.
Yeah, it's everywhere. My family, King James is my family member. He authored that Bible. He put all the books together and removed the books in the 12th century. And you posted Hugh of Lincoln in the 12th century. And that's when my own family member was reauthoring the Bible, the King James version. I
Well,
find all that.
King James was in the 1600s.
Yeah, but the 1200s is when they started putting the books together, and if you remember, they removed the dragon books, the dragon lady Bowe. They removed 13 books and added 6 or 7.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You remember?
Sure.
All
Bell
of
and
that.
the Dragon,
All of
all
that.
that. Apocryphal books.
I'm related to all the kings in Europe, and I'm not bragging when I say that. I wish I weren't. My life has been a nightmare since the day I was born.
Yeah.
Because I have the Church of England, the Baptist Church, the Catholic Church using me since birth, and I also have the United States government and Israel and London and Denmark and Switzerland and Norway and every country in Europe using me since the day I was born, because I am those royal kings. That's my family line. And then I have Americans that have been brainwashed with, I want to kill everybody. I'm the Illuminati that wants to kill everybody on your money.
It was interesting when we watched that homemade video that you had from back in the 60s. And I think it was your sister, the whole town came out for a parade for her birthday. And she had a friend with her.
That's the Catholic Church. Yeah, no,
yeah.
We had, yeah.
Yeah, most people don't get that sort of a celebration. You have to have some sort of a lineage for that, sort of a response.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, my whole life is just amazing like that. And it was all, my father told me on his deathbed, he said, everybody's jealous of you. He says, it's a good thing you moved away from here. He told me that everybody who knows me is jealous of me. My father never lied to me. He was a veteran out of World War II on submarines, and he was special forces. And like I say, my mother's family was Admiral Byrd. And my father and my wife's father both served with the Kennedy family in World War II. Those people never lied to me. They tried to help me as everybody else attacked me. And I was attacked at birth. And the attacks never stop. I'm still attacked today.
Yeah, didn't they murder Admiral Byrd the year you were born? Is that correct?
Admiral Byrd was murdered on the day I was kidnapped, and my father's hands were cut off at a Divco where he made milk trucks for Bucky Fuller. And Bucky Fuller was my mother's family. They had given my dad a job after World War II, building the milk trucks my mother's family owned the patents on. And a company by the name of Divco made those milk trucks. That was back.
I've noticed the Fuller company still does quite a bit, just like the Harris. I saw that American Idol was made by the Fuller family. The TV series, the talent show.
Yeah. The only person ever on my stage when I performed was Simon. We would allow Simon to come on the stage and sing with us. And that was back in the 70s and 80s before.
And as Simon Fuller made American Idol. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. I never appeared on Simon's show. When they came to Detroit, I was gonna go and appear on it with my band Bottom Line. I stood in line all day, but then they wanted me to sign all my rights away to them. And I was a publisher myself, so I just refused to sign the contract and never appeared. I walked away.
Mm-hmm.
They had already stolen my trademark Bottom Line and stolen my name all over the globe. So I wasn't about to sign a document that giving them permission to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that was a setup, right?
Yeah. And that's what they do to all those people that go on, America's Got Talent or Britain's Got Talent. They have them sign a form, and they actually sign all their rights away to that media group. And that's something I would never do, especially after they already stole my life at birth. Why would I sign a paper giving them permission to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So I never signed that. everything they did to me and all the movies they used me in and my name and my trademark, I've never given anybody permission to do that, Greg.
Yeah,
I,
no,
I,
that was stolen and covered up.
yeah, yeah. And then they tried to trick me into signing documents like America's Got Talent. And I'm not that dumb. I mean, I studied law to become a publisher. So I didn't fall for that trick. Um, and it's interesting that Simon Fuller gave you Simon Cowell, as I lived across the street from Harvey Holstein, and you got Harvey's nudie magazine with Playboy, and Charlie Hebdo, and Julian Assange. All of that's related in my life, but nobody would ever believe it. So I'm not going to concentrate on that. Harvey was a World War II veteran, and he was my father's best friend coming out of World War II, but he was from France. And he was in the France military, and then he ran part of the France underground in World War II. And he lived across the street from me, and behind his house was Demanchek, who they deported back to Israel for war crimes against Israel in around 1970, 72, something like that. So I grew up with the French underground, the Italian underground, and my father being special forces in the Navy with the Kennedy family. And then behind those three men from World War II was the guard at one of the supposed Holocaust gas chambers lived in my neighborhood for about 40 years.
Wow.
And that's all history that only I know. It's been in the newspapers, but nobody in your generation or even mine is smart enough to put the things together that my life was about. The only people who know what my life was about are the people close to me who stole my trademark and my name.
And earlier you mentioned Hugh Lincoln, that goes back to the 12th century there, and then you went to school with the Lincoln family as well. It's really interesting. And then
Right, yeah, and then my family member Clara Harris was with Lincoln.
Clara Harris, yeah.
Yes, and the Harris family did not sell slaves like the Emhoff family did. Kamala Harris, her real name nowadays is Emhoff, but she uses the Harris name. And you can see I'm not Asian and I'm not South African. And she is. And if you were to, take my blood or a swab and do my DNA, which I've done, I'm 100% European heritage. Clara Harris was too. And she married a guy in Germany, which is not Asia, it's Germany.
Yeah, after Rathbone, her fiance,
it's not
there,
an Asian heritage, that's a European heritage. So
yeah, he was upset because
the real Harris family was with Lincoln. They're 100% European heritage.
Yeah. What I was going to say, you said they went to Germany. Well, that's because right after he failed to save Lincoln, in his mind, he was distraught about it. So he fled the country and took her with him, and they married over in Germany, I believe. And then,
I'm sure they knew the real truth about Lincoln's murder, and they were probably being harassed by the people who murdered Lincoln.
Probably.
Even in my day, as soon as Kennedy was killed, the Lincoln family gave me notebooks full of coincidences that aren't. There's no such thing as a coincidences, but
right.
Kennedy's name has the same amount of letters as Lincoln's name, and on, birth dates, and there was.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that he was in a Ford
list
Lincoln.
Of 500 things that both Kennedy and Lincoln shared together. As I grew up with the Lincoln family, and Kennedy and Jackie Onassis are my own cousins, so.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that was planned
But
decades in advance before they killed
you
Kennedy.
won't see those things in a newspaper. They're not going to give you truth in a newspaper, especially not in my neighborhood. The Detroit News, which had been the Detroit Times, while I was a Detroit News and Detroit Times paper carrier, I had the biggest route for the Detroit News in the history of the company. And the Detroit News stole my trademark before everyone else. As they murdered one of my singers, his name was Danny Harold. And the very newspaper I worked for from the age of 5 or 6 until I bought my first car at 16, they stole my trademark Bottom Line and used it on their front page for a couple of years. Nowadays, they use it on their online podcasts for their telephones. They stole my trademark, the very company I worked for. And that was slave labor. I used to deliver 1,500 customers, and then they give me inserts for advertisements they sold on a Schwinn bicycle. And the Schwinn bicycle and the newspaper together weighed 10 times the amount I did when I was doing that. And that, to me, that's childhood slave labor. That's no different than Kamala Harris, her family selling slaves for the Queen of England or the King of Denmark.
Yeah, I know something about delivering papers. I did that for 10 years and would fill my entire vehicle up. And you were going around as a kid doing that
I
on a
had
bicycle.
1,500 customers, and then
And the papers were bigger then too. They shrunk quite a bit.
Yeah, there was no TV, and when I started, nobody had a TV. You had radio. The WWE didn't exist, and they stole my trademark. You had Leapin' Larry Shane and Dick the Bruiser on Friday Night Radio. That was wrestling. And then DuPont, he painted the cars and the vans and the milk trucks that my uncle Bucky Fuller owned the patents for the General Motors van and the milk trucks and all the buses, and DuPont Chemical supplied the paint. And DuPont stole my trademark to form the WWE, and Steve Austin would come out drunk every night screaming, and that's the bottom line. I don't drink, and the last thing on earth I want is a drunk screaming my trademark after they stole it worldwide.
And it was interesting to discover that DuPont and Mills bred the thoroughbred horses that Jacqueline was riding when she fell off, which led to her death as well.
Yeah, and DuPont painted the vehicles my uncle owned the patents on, the milk trucks, the buses, the General Motors van. That was my family's patents. DuPont painted them, and Mills is another one of my uncles.
You're right. I
really know what I'm talking about, Greg, and I know what my own family and my neighborhood did to me as a child. They murdered kids around.
Yeah, DuPont and Mills made the horses, and then you knew two Mills, I think. Well, you knew Stanley Mills, the publisher, and then Doug Mills was taking the pictures of George Bush in the kindergarten class during 9/11.
Right.
Yeah, he still publishes pictures, I believe.
George Bush said my name, and then a woman who wanted to have sex with me had put George Bush into that kindergarten class. And the woman that put him in the kindergarten class was online with me naked as 9/11 happened.
Right.
And these things aren't coincidence, and people think I'm lying, and I'm not. I'm saying complete truth.
And then the kid that we won't say his name, but
the people calling me a liar have never gotten a truthful report in a newspaper or on the TV about 9/11. They've never.
Yeah, and the kid that ran a video store, video rental store, would send you videos, and George Bush chose to blame him for funding the terrorists.
Yeah, he would send me all his promotional videos because a promotional video, he can't sell them, so he would just give them to me. And he was a little kid from Iraq, and his father was a policeman in Iraq who moved his whole family to America because they
Yeah, so he blames them for funding the terrorists and attacks Iraq. That's
yeah, and they
freaking
were
insane.
Christian. They were Christians, Greg. They went to a Catholic church with me. They believed in Christianity. They weren't Muslim. And
Right.
George Bush blamed that family who owned the fast forward video stores. And then he was playing in a band with one of the Ford family members, Brian Ford. And I was trying to publish them with David Fitzgerald. David got them a contract to put their videos in the Harmony Houses and Peachtree Records, and Walmart was and Kmart were even going to sell them. And then 9/11 happened.
Yeah, it's no wonder George Bush said your name on 9/11. He said Hugh's structures are
Yeah,
collapsing.
he made a mistake and said my name because he was surrounded by my family, and they had stolen my trademark and 28,000 worldwide entertainment contracts from my publishing company. And
Yeah.
my publishing license came from Foley Federal Court. And Foley was the first person they beheaded.
Right.
None of that's coincidence.
Yeah, so you were online with the girl that put George Bush in the thing. You knew Stanley in the kindergarten class. You knew Stanley Mills. Mills was taking the pictures. Doug Mills was taking the pictures of George Bush. You were getting videos, promotional videos from a guy who ran a video store, and George Bush blamed him for funding the terrorists. And you also knew
my whole childhood was a setup from the government when they murdered
yeah, it's real obvious. But you also knew the lady that George Bush blamed for training the terrorists to how to fly, and she didn't even fly big aircraft. She just flew small aircraft.
I actually went on her planes myself when I lived in Key West. That's right.
It's freaking insane how they put it all together like that.
Flights and little planes over the Gulf and show them the islands and the ocean.
Yeah, she didn't even know how to fly a
neither
747 or whatever those planes were.
747. No.
Right.
It was just a complete setup. And then all the Muslims, their passports showed up in the dust below a building that turned to dust and was on fire, which is just total lies. And
yeah, everything about it's a lie.
They had put me in jail when I stopped Noriega's drugs. They put me in jail for a year. 7 months, I went to jail after stopping Noriega's drugs on a farm I bought from one of Trump's tax attorneys. I moved on.
Isn't that interesting that his Mazars are in the news yesterday?
Yeah,
they may end up going to jail with Donald Trump possibly if this turns out.
And
there they were running a CIA-led drug ring on the property that they.
I really doubt that'll happen, Greg. And the news media is always BS.
Right.
They want you to think that the FBI and CIA are helping me, and they're not. They're not helping me whatsoever.
Yeah, they'll pretend to do something
That's
about it.
just like everybody in Trump's cabinet was one of my neighbors who stole my trademark and helped hide the murders of all those kids in Oakland County. Barr was my neighbor.
A lot of people don't understand what I was talking about with the property and the farm, and with you stopping Noriega's drugs. So maybe we should clarify that because a lot of people aren't going to understand what we're talking about.
The farm that I got from Mazar was 7 square miles, and there were worker houses in the back of my farm that got rented to people who lived in them. And the people who lived in the worker houses, when I moved onto the farm I purchased from Mazar, was they were all dealing drugs. One was a real pharmacist.
Yeah, because you were playing in bottom line. You had big crowds.
There were retired nurses who were stealing prescription pads, writing fake prescriptions for things like Percocet and Darvons in the back of my house, and then they were selling cocaine and LSD.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the least of the problems. I mean, they had all the cocaine and all that there too.
Yeah, and they were selling it to all the. I moved on to this farm and became aware of that because the guy owned ice cream trucks, Good Humor ice cream trucks, and he was distributing the drugs on ice cream trucks. And the woman that lived with them, she had 3 little girls, and all 3 little girls um, overdosed. I think the oldest was 7. A 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 6-year-old or 7-year-old overdosed on LSD after taking ice cream off a Good Humor truck that he parked in my driveway.
Yeah, these people are
And
terrible.
that's when I became aware of the drugs, and I talked to Mr. Giles, who set me up with Trump's tax attorney. And he says, yeah, I know there's a lot of drugs there. I burnt a few 100 pounds of marijuana last year.
Hmm.
And this is back in the 70s, Greg.
Well, see, they set you up there. My
100 pounds of
understanding,
marijuana, 100 pounds of marijuana in Michigan was a life
that was
sentence.
huge back then. Yeah, you would have. Yeah, I would have sent you to
I
jail for life.
had my card partner friend, Sinclair, who introduced the Beatles to Sullivan. He went to jail for 30 years for a couple of joints.
Yeah, for like a single joint. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they wanted to set you up there because they wanted to get the popularity because you were in a band. Bottom
Yeah, I was
line,
playing
they
in all
wanted
the
the people to
clubs,
come
so
there,
they
because
set
all
the
the people
drugs.
go to the bars. A lot of them are druggies and that stuff. So they wanted to associate, like, they just wanted to draw from your popularity and get people there. Then, but it backfired because
No, it
you turned
wasn't
them
getting
into the
people.
FBI.
They wasn't getting people there. You're putting words into my mouth. They
Okay.
wanted to sell drugs at the clubs I was playing in, and I had contracts. I played in clubs with contracts for 40 years, and they
Right.
knew I
Yeah,
was
that's what I'm
playing and
talking
had
about. Right.
contracts. So they set me up in front of these drug dealers so they could come to where I was playing and sell their drugs. That's what they
Right.
were
Right.
doing.
That's what I'm talking about.
And
What I'm trying to
for
say.
some reason, when those little girls were found overdosed in my driveway as I moved in, and I became aware of the people behind me and on either side of me selling the drugs, I put a stop to the drugs. It turned out to be Noriega,
Hmm.
and then they use El Chapo to hide me too, and El Chapo's wife. They use El Chapo and his wife to hide my truth.
And you actually had met him, right? The real
Yeah, I
El
knew El
Chapo.
Chapo, and I knew his kids. His kids married an American woman. Yeah, I know all about him, Greg, and I worked with him at Phillips Magnavox a long time ago. And I don't do drugs.
Right. Right.
And
Well, you wouldn't have
people,
turned him into the FBI yourself if you were doing them.
yeah, I would have done just like at Mazar. They weren't doing drugs at Phillips Magnavox. So, but the media can't hide to me, and the FBI can't lie to me like they can lie to you, because I know these people. I really know these people.
Hmm.
I knew the people selling Robert Tosh Plumley and Kiki Camarino's drugs, and my fiance Kiki was murdered at the same time I stopped the drugs. That the CIA agent delivering them to the back of my farm, he was tortured and murdered by a Mexican drug lord. They tell you, well, my fiance was murdered at that time also.
Yeah.
And then Robert Tosh Plumley has spent a lifetime lying to me. Robert Tosh Plumley told me that he lived with Judith Baker. And
In Albuquerque. Yeah.
I talked to Judith Baker, and she said, no, he's never lived with me.
Yeah.
So the CIA and the FBI lie to me all the time, and that's because the very people that kidnapped me and tortured and raped me and killed even my own twin next to me and dumped his body from Michigan in a Pennsylvania field where that other 9/11 plane crashed. That same family that kidnapped me runs the FBI sex crime division to this day. And then Trump's friend Graham owns the media in Detroit. Graham Media is WJR and Channel 4 News. And they've hidden my truth all these years, 7 decades. They
wrote a book about your twin brother that they murdered back in '57, I think it was. Yeah, The Boy in the Box, which I bought online.
Yeah, well, they'll never solve these murders, Greg. They dump bodies all around me. That's why I was telling you, Ronnie, he played with the Ford family. And this is right after President Gerald Ford took Nixon's place and Spiro Agnew's place. Well, President Gerald Ford is actually my family, the Gardner family. His real name wasn't Ford. He used the Ford name.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, his parents were King and Gardner, right?
and Bush set up Ronnie, and Ronnie was playing with Brian Ford. None of this is coincidence in my life, Greg, and all of this is Oakland County. It's Oakland and Macomb County. And they murdered 3 of my lawyers. They murdered my judge. Every time they murder one of my wives, I hire an attorney. They murder the attorney. So murder charges never got filed. And Victoria was a Virgo. Like today's a full moon. That's why I'm doing this video, is because of Victoria. I have an open murder case for Victoria, who was a Virgo. And the day I married her, she was in a wheelchair. She had muscular dystrophy. She was one of Jerry Lewis's telethon for muscular dystrophy people. I married her to take care of her. They murdered her in her wheelchair on the Manning Ranch in 2011 on Halloween Day. I hired an attorney. They murdered the attorney on the same day I hired him to file her murder charges. It took me 5 years to get murder charges filed. And when I went to get the murder charges filed, the chief of police, one told me he couldn't help it that if the government was corrupt, and he was talking about the White House in Greenville, where we live, I and my wife lived. And then the other chief of police, where my wife was actually murdered a second time, he told me, well, can't we just leave this murder up to God instead of filing?
Now, these are heck of a statements from people who are supposed to, their jobs are to investigate murders.
Yeah, and neither one of them did.
Right.
Neither one of them did. They pulled the detective off my case because he couldn't help it if the government was corrupt. So I went to the other city where she was murdered a second time after I saved her life. And that chief of police in that city says, oh, well, can't we leave it up to God? And this is after.
And the names of both of these policemen are interesting as well. You want to share those?
No, I don't.
Okay.
A chief of police should never tell the victim of a murder, let's just leave it up to God. He should investigate the murder. In my wife's murder and in Terry Heath's murder, in Terry Heath's murder, they didn't do any investigation. In Victoria's murder, they
Well, I'll just say this, those names are historical names that everybody would know.
Yeah, I don't care to confuse this part.
Right, go ahead.
It'll just put everybody off on different tangents.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in my life are historical names. They murdered my fiance, Terry Heath. As Sarah Heath and John McCain ran to be president, they murdered Terry Heath on my ranch.
Yeah,
same family member. Her murder never investigated. I tried to get the DA. I tried to talk to the district attorney when I opened up Victoria's murder case. I finally got Victoria's murder case opened up because they had to open it up. I said, well, I had to bury my wife without her ears. Why were her ears missing? And they couldn't provide an answer, so they have to open a murder case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, so they opened a murder case, but they never. And in the 5 years since they opened a murder case, they've never once talked to me. So the murder case is on the records, but they're not trying to solve it. If they were trying to solve it, they would talk to me. Can you imagine opening up a murder case for your daughter or your wife, and then the police never talk to you, Greg?
I know, that's crazy.
No, they've done that to me with four women, 2 fiancés, Kiki and Terry Heath, and 2 wives, Nancy.
Yeah, and I mean, I've even seen you on video with a witness that has also said that
first wife, Nancy Fredericks, they did the same thing, didn't investigate it as a murder. And then Victoria.
Yeah, and when you call the FBI about these things, they always hang up. And you have a witness that has testified that, you know, she's also heard them hang up on you multiple times.
Yeah, if I call the FBI about dead bodies transported across state lines, they hang up on me. The FBI, after I made that video and put it up on Facebook, the following year, one of those ladies that hung up on me, she did call me back and take a report, but I doubt it's ever gone anywhere because she says, well, if we need you for anything, we'll call you. And they've never called. And I told her about multiple murders that are still unsolved today. They would, if they were trying to solve the murders, it didn't know
Right.
the truth, they would call me.
Sure.
No,
Yeah.
there's murders I'm involved in, like the Kennedy family murders, the Oakland County child murders, 2 of my fiancés, 2 of my wives, Jimmy Hoffa, and there's murders all over the country I'm involved in, but they never solved the murders. And then people do things like murder my family members, like Brooks and Floyd. And you're well aware, if I do, every time I do a video, I'm marked with a murder somewhere in the country. And you know that you've been following it for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And nobody else in the country knows what I'm telling you other than the police and the FBI, and they just totally deny I exist.
Yeah, even one here in this town, right here in this town where I live, back in the same year, just 19 days after the murder of Victoria, was a murder of a girl here, and I know that's related too.
Yeah, and then you get cover-ups, like her own mother doesn't want you to tell anybody, right?
Right.
Yeah, well, my mother didn't tell anybody when I was kidnapped and tortured and my twin was murdered. Mothers are like that. They try to cover it up. And don't ask me why, Greg. Mothers, in their motherly fashion, I was kidnapped, tortured, and raped. So she didn't want all my neighbors to know I was raped by men. So they covered it up.
Right.
And in the process of covering it up, the police who helped her cover it up also covered up the murder of the Kennedy family. They covered up the murder of Jimmy Hoffa. And the lies they told when I was 4 became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they found they had to steal my name, my trademark, all my money, my federal publishing and IRS licenses, and they had to blow up the receipts, Greg. And that's exactly what they did. It was $2 trillion in theft. And that's what I was in charge of at Bottom Line Publishing from Foley Federal Court, $2 trillion in entertainment.
Yeah, and they were breaking a bunch of international laws, and they had to cover all that.
Yeah,
as well.
And nowadays the media tells you, well, Jeff Bezos is the first person to be a billionaire, or Elon Musk is the first person to be a billionaire, or now Elon Musk, and all that's lies. I had $2 trillion going through my business all the way back in 1970. They don't want you to know the truth. You know, and it doesn't mean I had the $2 trillion. It means that's the amount of business I did at my business.
Right.
You understand it? And they had to hide. They had to hide the theft. They had to blow up the receipts on 9/11 to that business they stole. They didn't know I had become a real publisher. These people, I didn't tell anybody. My own family didn't know I had become a federal publisher. I didn't tell them. Why would I tell a brother who had just raped my fiance in front of my kids I was a publisher? Why would I even bother talking to him?
And your dad was abusive and drunk as a kid. Yeah.
I put those people out of my life, and they continued to stab me in the back, and they didn't even know who I was. And then when they realized who I was, gee, they had to blow up the Twin Towers. And that's exactly what they did, Greg. And then on the Pentagon, my civil rights case was in the Pentagon, and my civil rights case was against the family that built the Pentagon. In my generation, that man's daughter became a lawyer, and they wouldn't allow me remember I told you when I stopped Noriega's drugs, they put me in jail for 7 months, wouldn't allow me a phone call to my own attorney, appointed me an attorney, and her father built the Pentagon.
Yeah, Leslie Groves, I believe.
Yeah, and my civil rights case was against the Groves family.
Yeah.
Because
this is way too many coincidences for people to just dismiss.
No, it's not coincidence. And then
it's not coincidence.
My murdered twin, his body was thrown in the field where the the last 9/11 plane supposedly crashed. This is all lies.
Yeah.
And it was George Bush with his military friends just covering up what they had done to me from birth. And then, if you remember, I had just divorced a woman who was much older than me, who was having sex with me before I was an adult. And that woman's mother would always attempt to have sex with me too, even after I was married to her. Her own mother tried to have sex with me numerous times. I divorced that family, and then Trump's lawyer put me on that farm with the drugs. So I went from one family selling drugs into the family they got the drugs from, by design. And this is all by design, by Oakland and Macomb County Police and the FBI. And every senator in the country was selling the drugs.
Yeah, the CIA seems to be involved too.
Yeah, and then on 9/11, I was corresponding in Senate hearings over the Berne Convention with every senator, all the congressmen. 9/11 happened, and all of a sudden, none of them knew me. And all of this is by design, and it's my own government, and they're hiding all these murders in me. And then they give you coast to coast with fake story after fake story about Jimmy Hoffa coming from people who lie to me. People like George Knapp lied to me and my roommate here on numerous occasions before he gave me the last book about Jimmy Hoffa. And then they make a movie out of it. They make millions of dollars selling you tickets.
And that's why when you called into Coast to Coast and talked to John B. Wells, they ended up firing him.
They fired John B. Wells because Hubert Wells, the generation before John B. was playing cards with me in Mora, Michigan, and he was SWAT teamed at Chrysler on 9 Mile. Right in front of me and his daughter. I mean, and then Coast to Coast, they took over Premier Networks when the men I was working for, the Biondo brothers, they owned Premier. That was their trademark. They were murdered.
Yeah, hit over the head with a hammer.
I played there. I left the bowling alley they owned, the lounge. They owned 2 lounges in a bowling alley. I performed in one of them. Across the street from my college, Ronald Reagan had just talked to me at my college. The Pope had just come into town.
It's amazing how all that's connected, Coast to Coast and the Biondi brothers, bowling alley.
To me and Premier Networks. And if I call up George Norrie, and he knows me, I mean, he really knows me. I have pictures of him giving my roommate and me hugs was Giorgio Tsoukalos, and I'm sitting with everybody on a show, and Jim Mars was starting to write my book before he was murdered. It's just hilarious. You know,
and there it is, right across from Macomb Community College where you were going.
How my neighbors have spent a lifetime murdering people. And I'm not putting George Norrie down. I don't think George Norrie knows that any of this happened because he came from Turkey. He lives.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure he doesn't. But here, let me finish that thought, Hugh. You were talking about how that's across from the college you went to in Ronald Reagan, but well, he had just visited your college there, and then goes back to California when he was shot.
George Norrie actually told me to call and check in with him and let him know how my cancer was doing from time to time. And I haven't done that simply because the last time I called in, the last 2 times I called in, his guest lied about my life.
Yeah.
So I'm not, if he's got somebody that just wrote a book and they're lying about events I'm in, it's a waste of my time to call. Because they make fun of me. They give you a lie in a book or a movie, and then I look like the crazy man. And I'm not the crazy man. How could I possibly be involved in Oakland County child killings, Admiral Byrd's murder, my own family's murders, my wife's murders, the president's murders, Jimmy Hoffa's murders, 9/11.
Yeah, Ford being shot, Reagan being shot.
Right. How could I possibly be involved in all these things and not know what I'm talking about? Timothy McVeigh and John Nichols lived next door to me for over 20 years, Greg. The Nichols family still lives next door to me right now. Okay, for people to tell me I'm crazy, it's just ludicrous. They're insane. The people who call me crazy are the very people who kidnapped me at birth and run the FBI sex crime division now and are hiding the Oakland County child murders for 6, 7 decades now.
Right. And Alex
They're hiding
Jones
the
was married
truth
to
of
Nicholas
Kennedy.
too, which is no
They're hiding the
coincidence.
truth of Kennedy. They're hiding the truth of Jimmy Hoffa. They're hiding the truth of Oklahoma bombing. They're hiding the truth of 9/11. And I can go on and on and on with all these murders and all these lies they fed to the public. And if I call into a radio show, if I call Savage, who actually played in a band with me, or if I call Rush Limbaugh, or if I call Coast to Coast, I can't even say I'm Hugh Squier. I own Bottom Line New York. I'm not allowed to say that. But they say it every day of the week. Do you understand this? And then they use my name and my likeness in Hollywood movies for 7 decades, since the day I was born. They make me Baby Huey and Herbie the talking car and Francis the talking mule. And they go on and on with Star Trek saying bottom line, which is my stolen trademark, and Steve Austin saying bottom line, and Jesse Ventura and Hulk Hogan. And for 7 decades, they've used my likeness and my appearance and my stolen trademark. But if I call into their shows, I can't say, hi, I'm Hugh Squier. I'm Hugh Francis Squier. I own Bottom Line New York. They don't allow me. If I say that, they cut me off. Then they have guests on who give you a fake story. And this has been going on in my life for 7 decades, Greg. And that's why I make these videos with you. That's why you're writing my biography. Victoria, when they murdered her on Halloween Day in 2011, she was a Virgo. So this is a good night for a Virgo moon.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if this is a warm moon or a cold moon. But
I don't know enough about that to say.
they slit Victoria's throat Halloween Eve. And then they called me to watch her bleed out. And I'm serious. I watched her bleed out through her throat. And they tried to tell me it was a disease after her ears were missing. After they called my home and screamed Slater in my phone, and Slater had let Shovel out of jail. And the only person who knew Shovel was my previous wife, who's still alive. I don't.
Was there also a Slater on Coast to Coast too, or am I getting names mixed up?
No, you've seen Slater. Slater's the DA in Tennessee. Slater was a judge in Michigan, where I built my house with my second wife.
Okay.
And the only person on earth that knew Shovel was my second wife. The only reason I know Shovel is because she told me about him. She told me about him in 1969. Nobody else around me in Michigan knew who Shovel was, other than the people he murdered.
Yeah, and he had just been let out of prison.
It's just amazing, Greg. That woman is older than all my other 2 fiancés and 2 wives. She's 20 years older than all of them. And she's still alive. But every wife after I divorced her, every fiancé and every wife was murdered after I left her. And I divorced her. She didn't divorce me. I divorced her. I gave her the house I built for her for $1, and I moved out. Trump gave me a farm, a 7-acre farm through Missouri. Had the drugs on it. And I left that woman because her family was killing people and she wouldn't stop selling drugs. And I was making $6,000 a week. She didn't need to sell drugs. And this is all the way back when I was 24 years old, Greg.
Yeah.
This woman was almost 20 years older than me. I divorced her, and then every wife I have after her is murdered over a 37-year period. I turn around and she's still alive. Who murdered my wives?
Yeah,
And it was
has
so
to be
they
her
could,
family.
it was so they could use my trademark and my name all over the globe. You understand this? I understand it too well. But her father was a state policeman. Her uncle, a Supreme Court justice. And they won't even investigate my wife's murders.
Was it her Supreme Court justice? Was it Westinghouse or West
It was
House or
West House.
West House? Yeah.
And in my
And yours
family,
was Fuller.
Mr. Fuller, and who created America's Got Talent? Mr. Fuller.
Yeah, Fuller.
A Supreme Court justice. Oh, and they won't investigate my wife's murders. And the one I divorced, she's still alive. Very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And she was a Libra. And then who died in Houston? Gallia, the Scales, which is Lady Justice Libra. And she practices witchcraft and she's done drugs all her life. And I end up being the crazy bad guy because I refused to support children that weren't mine. This woman gave me sex when I was a minor so that I would marry her and support her brother's kids and her kids. And when I divorced her, her whole family flipped out on me. Why should I raise somebody else's kids, Greg?
No, you didn't have any obligation.
When the mother won't listen to me.
Right.
It didn't work.
She's out selling drugs and everything.
Nobody gave me, I had kids from 7 different adults. Nobody gave me any child support. I was 17 years old supporting everybody else's kids. Why would I do, why would I do that? Must have been good sex from a woman 20 years older than me, huh?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, they knew exactly how to use me and manipulate me because they had kidnapped me when I was 4, and they murdered kids all around me.
Mm-hmm.
At her house, there was bodies thrown in the ditch. The house I built for her. You understand that?
Yeah, it's just a lot to take in, right?
Yeah. The police never tried to investigate because they know the truth. And they've been hiding me for 7 decades. And all the media helps them do it. And George Norrie, he just interviews whoever they give him the interview. He don't know what's going on.
Sure.
Giorgio Circolos, he'll give me a hug, and he's on the History Channel, but he don't know what's going on. He wasn't even born when the Kennedys were murdered. And then they do these things. They'll have George Norrie talk to me, or they'll have Giorgio Tsoukalos come up and give me a hug because I told them about a UFO I saw. Just because you see a UFO, it doesn't mean it's from outer space. A UFO could be your own military. You just
Right.
had a UFO in the news today that the airline pilot saw.
Yeah, I read that.
Cylindrical object go over their head. Well, it sounds like a missile to me. And how do they know? If the military is testing a new missile, they ain't going to tell you.
That's right.
They leave it, and then everybody says, "Oh, it's a UFO." See, this is truth. There are UFOs. No, it was a missile. It nearly missed a United Airlines plane or whoever it was, American Airlines. The pilot saw it go by overhead. It becomes a UFO because the military ain't going to say it was ours. And it could have been Russia's military. How do you know it wasn't one of their missiles that go around the world and they're testing it? It could be anybody on Earth. It could be China's missile.
Yeah.
It could be your missile. Maybe you built a missile in your backyard and you tried it out. Everybody will automatically say, "Oh, it's a UFO," and they lead you to believe that.
Sure.
And they lead.
Yeah, if you invest all your time and energy,
they
and
lead you
mental talent into
that.
looking into UFOs, you're never going to find reality.
Greg, they lead you to believe that, and I know this is proof. Our truth, because of Laura Eisenhower.
Yeah.
I went to coast to a real meeting, and I said I met an alien. And then the next time I went to the same meeting, there's Laura Eisenhower, and she took over my entire story.
Yeah.
So my truth never got told. You got a lie from Laura Eisenhower, just like her father lied to you about World War II. And it's so she could sell a book and make money, just like her father had hotels and made money. And you went to World War II to protect his land. I'm tired of the government using me.
Mm-hmm.
And my family members are on all the US money. My father told me they're all jealous of me. Because my great grandfather's pictures, you know, Lincoln or Grant or Chase or Morgan are on your money, it doesn't mean I'm rich. The White House stole my trademark, stole my birth name, murdered my twin, stole my IRS tax licenses, and then blew up all the receipts to $2 trillion before I was 18 years old, Greg. This is what the White House did to me. And then the White House, through Bush, Obama, the Clintons, they continued to murder my wives. You understand this picture?
Yeah.
My fiance, Terry Heath, created the Head Start program for Ronald Reagan in California before he was president. They murdered her. They hung her in her dog's leash. Lady Gaga, oh, they just stole her bulldogs. Interesting, huh? I heard they were used for sex. And then she bought them back for $500,000.
She finally did get them? Oh, that's interesting.
Lady Gaga and Madonna, that's the mafia that stole my trademark.
Yeah.
And they're marking me. Papa's buried under G&G, Gaga. And I don't think it, Greg, I've lived this. Not a pipe dream, I'm not making it up. When they murdered Victoria, Locricchio, Madonna's mafia family, moved into my home under false pretenses and then tried to say I was attempting to murder her and another woman. And the other woman was put on a plane and flown to California by the police themselves. They knew she was lying. They got phone calls from 17 states saying that I was attempting and had murdered a girl who was very much alive sitting in California. Or I'd be in jail now.
Right.
Madonna attempted to set me up like that with the Clintons in 2011 as the next election was coming up. As they murdered my wife, Victoria, slitting her throat and then calling me to watch her bleed out. You understand this? And then everybody tries.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Every day I get people trying to tell me I murdered my wives. They don't have a clue. All of my wives were murdered a second time, thousands of miles away from me. I found them dead, saved their lives, flew them to hospitals, and then they were murdered again.
Mm-hmm.
The people that tell me things like I murdered my wife, they don't have a clue as to who I am or what they're talking about.
Yeah, and two of them were murdered in several states away, and you hadn't even seen them in decades.
My last murdered wife, I divorced her in 1969.
Right.
But I know she was murdered. And she was murdered on the very day Trump let the Bundys out of prison. And in my life, that's not coincidence. You have the hijacker Cooper. Cooper kidnapped my daughter. That's a name the FBI gave him. The FBI that kidnapped me at 4 gave Cooper that name when he hijacked a plane. That's not his real name. They never figured out that fictitious character's real name, the one that hijacked the plane and parachuted out under the Rogue River. That's a name the FBI gave him, Cooper.
Yeah.
Clive
and you went to Warner high school, and then you just
Bundys,
had
the Bundys, Clive and Bundy and the Bundys. Oh, you had Ted Bundy, not his real name once again. The very
Yeah.
FBI that kidnapped me gave them that fake name,
Right.
hiding me.
Yeah.
And I'm the
But
only
again,
guy.
with Cooper, Hugh Cooper also, you went to the Warner School there in
Yeah, with the
Michigan.
real Cooper, and he died
Yeah.
in a car. He
Well,
died in a car accident.
Warner just exploded a bomb in Tennessee, and who was the mayor of the city, Nashville? That was also Cooper.
Yeah,
When
well,
Warner
yeah,
blew up
I
the
went to Warner School. Well, I'm well
right,
aware of all of this, Greg, but people call me crazy.
right.
You know, I killed my wives. I'm crazy. Nobody helps me. And you know, nobody helps me. Look
Yeah.
how long I put up my wife's murder videos. I ask people, I tell people I need an attorney. Do you see me with an attorney? No. I'm 70 with cancer, shingles. I'm retired. They've taken away all my income. I was 100% disabled. They took away my disability. So I'm essentially broke, and I need help, and nobody helps me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just amazing. You understand this? Police chiefs tell me leave the murder up to God, which is exactly what they're not supposed to do.
Right.
Another one in the other town tells me he can't help it. He's not going to pursue the case because he can't help it if the White House is corrupt. And that was Obama's White House. And then the other city where he told me to leave it to God was a black man. So the whites and the blacks both use me and both hide truth of hundreds of murders. And no media will interview me, but they give you lies about my life in all the media. And if I call them, I can't say, hi, I'm Hugh Francis Squier. I own Bottom Line. They hang up on me. And I'm not lying about any of this.
Right.
Victoria had her throat slit, and they called me on the phone as they slit her throat and asked me to identify her body. And she was still bleeding out when I got there. She was 70 miles away from me when her throat was.
Yeah, and she was in a hospital, and they let that happen.
Yeah, under a guard, a state police guard from Senator Graham's state. And I had already filed attempted murder charges in 2 cities, in Greenville and Johnson City. The police who took the reports used fake badge numbers and fake names. As a state policeman from Senator Graham's state looked over my wife, her throat was slit and her ears were removed. Over a 35-day period, Greg, and I wasn't there at the hospital. I had a great big ranch I had to take care of, and I had to work, and I had to pay the
that's amazing how well they marked this, Hugh. This is a little bit of a, but it'll match what you just said. You had her life flighted on a helicopter, and she was in the hospital for 35 days. And in the movies, I keep seeing helicopters with the number 35 on.
No, they marked me and everything, Greg. And half the police cars will have 4 on it, which is when they murdered me and killed Admiral Byrd. And I'm well aware of this. Your friend Jonathan Bowe just put up the COVID virus, and you already know, I told you about Lieber and the American military scientists before COVID even existed. Oh, that and your gematria calculator, which I don't believe in at all, is the number 4. There it is again. COVID-19.
Yep.
You understand? You understand what I'm saying? This is the people who kidnapped me at birth, and they're orchestrating all your media, Greg. And I don't think it, I know it. And I'm related to all the kings in Europe and all your presidents. And they attacked me at birth, and they're brainwashing you and everybody around you and hiding murders, hundreds of murders in my life. They're hiding them. And I sit here and I make these videos, and nobody even attempts to help me. Everybody just sits there and sucks on their thumb or posts videos about their missing dogs. Lady Gaga just paid $500,000 for 2 missing bulldogs. She couldn't help me and hire an attorney after marking my daughter all these years. And Jimmy Hoffa is buried under G&G. Oh, she's got $500,000 for 2 bulldogs, but she can't find me an attorney to look into the murders of 4 women.
Well, heck, you're related to the Queen. You'd think the Queen would care enough to
Nobody cares
about her own family.
Greg, they're all jealous of me, just like my father said. They were jealous. And how are they gonna turn themselves in? Lady Gaga and Madonna aren't gonna admit they're hiding my truth of Kennedy's murder, or they're hiding my truth of 9/11. They're not gonna admit to that.
No.
And then they try to pin drugs and murders and rapes on me, and they've done this all my life. I was with Jimmy Hoffa the day he disappeared. I was with him. And I know where the hole was dug to bury him.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was with him as he disappeared. And you know yourself, I don't exist. The FBI detained me for Jimmy Hoffa's murder before they detained Chucky O'Brien, and I don't exist anywhere. And if I call in and say anything on Coast to Coast, your generation laughs at me and tells me I'm crazy on worldwide radio. And this is what's going on. And then everybody in your generation, you all think you know the truth, and you don't know nothing. You've been brainwashed from birth.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it. I've watched them do it. There's no cure for this disease called America.
I know, and every one of these people that I talk to, all of them believe all the false truthers that are hiding the.
Yeah, you were just talking
hiding
to a
reality.
couple. You were talking to a couple today about somebody. I can't even remember who. There's so many different. Oh, Julian Assange.
Yeah.
He's a pedophile. Oh, but no, he's not a pedophile now because the country of Sweden dropped the charges after 30 years.
Yeah, well, the statute of limitations expired, you know.
Yeah,
and now they're rewriting the story. It was originally that the statute of limitations expired. Now they're saying that they don't have enough evidence. But really, last year they were saying the statute of limitations expired.
It's all lies.
Mm-hmm.
The Stones gave you sympathy for the devil. Who killed the Kennedys? After all, it was me and you. And then they gave you Angie. And then I took Miller off of Julian Street. You got Julian ass Angie hiding me. And I said this in this video. Nobody will believe that, and it's gospel. I don't lie. I own Bottom Line Publishing. My wife, I divorced her. She was a witch. You got Julian ass Angie, and he created Wicca Leaks. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, Wiki means witch, right?
Right.
Wicca. You know.
Mm-hmm. So I divorced a witch who's still alive. They marked me with Julian ass Angie. As the Stones tell you, they killed the Kennedys and the Queen nicely. And this is what your media did before you were born, right? Angie was Harvey's daughter. Harvey's magazine is like Penthouse or Playboy. Harvey showed everything. And you could walk into any 7-Eleven or any Quick Trip and pick up a copy of Harvey's magazine and see naked women having sex with men, lots of men. And you get Snowden from there too. Greg Snow was the big porno star back then. So you get Snowden as they kidnapped me out of my Cub Scout den. I don't think I'm the truth, Greg. I know I'm the truth. They brainwashed all of you. And I watch them do it daily. And you know I do. How many times have I told you things that were going to happen a year before they happened?
Yeah, including coronavirus.
Yeah, I told you before the first person died from it, it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I was a paper boy and I know the con. And then everybody calls me crazy. And I'm the center of the con. I'm the very center of the con. And I'm not saying coronavirus isn't real. It's very real. I had it myself. It almost killed me. And you know that.
Yeah, I know. I didn't know if he was going to make it.
I was unconscious for 3 days. Couldn't breathe. And I didn't seek medical help. I stayed here in my home, and my friend kept me at home. And the reason I know it's COVID is because my friends got COVID too, and they were diagnosed by doctors.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use doctors simply because I got 4 wives murdered by doctors in hospitals. And the government hires them to murder my wife. And I don't think it, I know it. They made, every time they murdered my wife, they called me on the phone and told me about it and made fun of me. And then the police in whatever city I'm living in, they just leave it up to God, don't make out murder reports, and use fake names and badge numbers on the police reports. And none of this is a lie. This is my life, and this is how I've been treated for 7 decades. And I'm on all your money, Greg. And they're trying to destroy that money. They're trying to destroy the American money with Bitcoin. You already have the strongest currency on earth, and they're attacking you from Russia and China and England with Bitcoin. They're devaluing your dollar every time you buy into it. And you're already the leader in the world and the head currency of the world. They're destroying your currency, and you're all too stupid to know.